Thank you all for tuning into Character Development. If you enjoyed today's episode, make sure you help us out with the algorithm. Today's guest is a master photographer and a damn good philosopher, if I may say so. His resume includes brands like Adidas, Red Bull, and Complex, but beyond commercial work, at his core, he is an artist and an educator of the camera. On today's episode, we read some Roland Baratheis and Susan Sontag and went deep into the metaphysics of photography, discussing the role of photography in modern life as well as the value of photography in our personal lives. Sharing his insights on the importance of making and keeping memories, I'm happy to introduce all of you to my friend Mavro.
I blinked 4 times and 4 years done passed by. It only felt like 4 damn minutes done passed by. I done seen how quick life can pass by. You done live, you done loved and cried like mad times. Like oh my, done had a
In this section, he talks about the preservation that photography brings into the world, into the human experience, into the art itself. Because, every medium in a way preserves either the thing it's reflecting or the thing it's consuming. That's a different conversation.
Yeah.
But in this case, because photography is used so much as portraits, like with people, it preserves your life. It preserves, in a way, your essence to an extent. But in this section, he's talking about how not only does it preserve your life, but then it also kind of constitutes and solidifies your death.
It preserves your life and it solidifies your death.
Yeah.
Okay. How does a photograph do that?
Well, because a photograph, in essence, like not the conceptual what is a photograph, but like physically a photograph is paper. It's an object. It's a tangible thing. This tangible thing, although it will degrade eventually, this object will outlive you.
You know what I mean?
Like this piece of paper, if cared for. And like let's say if cared for, and like I frame it hanging on a wall, this piece of paper will outlive you.
Yes.
So the photograph in itself like constitutes and solidifies your death. It is a reminder that you will die, and now this reflection of me will outlive me, who I actually am, even though the photograph is a reflection of you, or a smaller version of you, an essence of you, a hint of you, but it's not you.
Okay,
You know what I mean? It's like,
because it's a picture of you. A picture of you is not you.
Yeah.
To me, like the thing, I guess the way I was interpreting it, because it was really hard, I think, for me to grasp that concept around that the paper outlives you. But the one thing I was grasping very clearly is a picture only captures a version of you. So it's like even your baby pictures, that's not you anymore. You know what I mean? And I think that's why it was hard for me to process the dying part of the concept that Baratheis is explaining, because it's like I'm still alive. And I guess it's hard for me to picture. Sometimes it's hard for me to picture my death. You know what I'm saying? Interesting choice of words. But it's like I know that the infant version of me has died. Like,
yes.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. And again, you can take it into like, again, the macro versus the micro, where it's like this is a version of me that's now dead. This is a contemporary like piece of me, like whatever I'm going through right now, trials and tribulations, which are all like contemporary, like they don't last forever. You know what I mean? So maybe this certain challenge when this photograph was made of me is now dead, and now I'm no longer that person. I think I'm looking at this as a whole, just me, a human being, just like me as a human being dying, and everything that comes with it, which is every chapter, every trial, every tribulation, every version, every arc, everything. Like me as a being, my death is constituted and solidified by a photograph. So you making a photograph of me or of anybody, whatever, just you creating a photograph of an individual now like confirms their death. Even though death was confirmed
the moment you're born, you're guaranteed
to die. But something about creating a photograph of someone is like, now I have a physical thing that is outside of you, that reflects you and is you, that will outlive you.
Because like in your form, your life also constitutes your death. So when you photograph it, you externalize that dichotomy.
Yeah.
And it's like now you have now you have physical evidence that
Yes,
you will
yeah,
die.
yeah, that's exactly what it is.
That makes sense.
I think
that
that's
makes
what he's
sense.
going for. Like now I have evidence that this piece of you
Yeah.
will outlive you. Even though it's a minuscule version of you and it's not an accurate or full representation of you, this cannot exist without you. And you can, I mean, you do exist without it, but it's like this is a piece of you that was created from your reflection. Because again, a photograph is of you. However you want to take that, again, the micro, the macro, whatever. But now it's like, now you have the evidence that you are going to die, but this won't.
Yeah. Holy fuck.
Yeah,
Now,
and I really like that part.
that shit hits me hard because
Yeah.
I was thinking about this photograph of my grandmother. You know what I mean? She died in 1991, and I was born in 1999. So every time I see that, it's the same photograph, like duplicated all across my family. And you go into most of my family's houses, you see that photograph of my grandmother. And this speaks to something Sontag was writing about, but it's a surreal experience to see that photo because it's like, I know that's my grandmother. I know I have some similar features to her actually, but this person is dead and I never met them. Yet they have this blood tie to me that is extremely profound. And according to my father, incredibly influential on my life and how he raised me. And so it's just a surreal experience in that I feel taken outside of time and space whenever I look at that photograph of my grandmother. And something Sontag was talking about is that photographs are the ultimate tool for surrealists, and they're the ultimate medium for surrealism. A painting can be surreal. I think of like a Salvador Dali painting.
Yeah.
Was it Infinite Memory or like the Recollection of Time? I forgot the title of it. And you got all the warped clocks and shit melting. You know, and it feels very surreal, but it's so outside of reality that it creates a surreal feeling at first glance, but that surreal feeling isn't maintained because I become acclimated to the painting. Versus a photograph, it always feels surreal because it is it's a stamp of time. Like it's a stamp of time and space. But I can look at it 30 years later. You know what I'm saying? And it's a surreal feeling. There's no other way to describe it but surreal because you just get that feeling in your gut and you're taken outside. And it just like everything around you starts to like blur and it's just you in that picture, locked in that moment. You know what I mean? And we have in the process of reading these books, I learned that the photo machine, our first photo machine ever, before the daguerreotype type was invented in like 1816.
Yeah.
And that feels so long ago, but it's not.
It's not. Especially in comparison to every other medium that's existed.
Yeah.
Especially like traditional mediums, like painting and
It's the newest medium.
Yeah.
Because even you can look at cinema and you can really kind of describe it as an offshoot of theater and something we've always done in terms of performing, doing plays. It's kind of evolved from that. The camera machine just gave us a new tool to experience the theater in a different way.
Yeah,
but I guess I want to ask you is like, you're a photographer. Sontag mentions that even for the photographer themselves, taking the photo is a surreal experience.
100%.
Not just looking at it as a viewer, but being the practitioner who captures the image. And as I didn't understand that part, because I don't understand how it's surreal for a photographer.
Yeah.
But how is it surreal for the photographer?
It's, first of all, I want to start with even using an average camera, like the tool itself, like the camera. Obviously with exceptions because not every single camera has a viewfinder, you know. But I think I want to start there. Even the experience of shooting and making photographs through a viewfinder is an experience in itself because it's like you are quite literally like the tool itself limits your perspective and limits your eyesight to a window. Right? Because now you have like it blocks out everything else. Like when you look through a camera, you just have this square. And everything, now you experience life through this square. And so that alone makes you hyper-focus on just everything going on inside of this given space. Instead of even though we don't think about it, because again, it's just like the human brain, that's how it works. But even though we focus on one thing and we have so much peripherals and things and information given to us, and I don't want to say information overload, but we're so used to getting so much, you become desensitized to reality.
Yeah.
That's what I'm trying to say. That because especially the way our eyes work and like our eyesight is so wide, even though we focus on one thing, like right now I'm looking at the camera and everything else gets blurred out because of vision or whatever and focus, and there's so much I can still see you to my left even though I'm looking here. The experience of shooting through a camera and having just your given window and having to really hyper focus on one thing, that alone is a beautiful experience.
Yeah.
So then on top of that, on top of now choosing the thing to focus on and choosing what to look at and choosing what to put inside of my frame, because that's really like, those are all my choices as an artist, as a photographer. Like those are your choices. You're choosing to include or not include something. And I think that's honestly what you choose to not include in your frame is more important than what you choose to include in your frame.
Absolutely.
So now going back and circling back to your question, like why is it such an ethereal and just surreal experience? Is one, the illusion of choice, and I guess like the power of choosing what's in my frame and choosing what's not in my frame, hyper focusing on this one thing, even though we're so used to all this information, it's like you can finally focus on one thing, and then from there, not only choosing what is in and what is not in your frame, what takes it even further is that click of the shutter. Now I'm choosing, and
Soundtalk was talking about this.
I'm choosing, and mind you, I haven't even read that yet.
Yeah,
I'm
bro.
so excited
You quoting her, you don't even know it yet.
Really?
Yeah.
And it's not the first time I've done that. When I was talking to my professor about why I hate landscape photography, but we'll get into that.
Yeah.
I haven't read that yet, but I'm really looking forward to it. But I mean, I'll continue. Maybe we're on the same spectrum, on the same thing. You know what I mean? But like, yeah. So first, like the first choice again is choosing what's in and out of my frame, because again, that's very important. Like choosing what not to include and what information and context and not provide. That's extremely important.
Yeah.
But then also now, like the power that I have of when to create the moment, which is clicking that shutter. That is surreal in itself, because again, now I have the power quite literally to freeze time forever. Just in this given information, just in this given frame, in this given box. Like it's surreal, man. Like it really is surreal, especially I think when doing something like street photography. I don't think it's, not to take away from any other kind of photography and experiences, you know, but it's not the same when I'm photographing like a product, or when I'm photographing, let's say, like a flat lay for a company, or like, it's not like I'm waiting for the shirt to move the right way. You know what I mean? Not to take away from it for sure. Or even like when I'm doing portrait photography, it's different. But I think something about photographing an environment or an object or a subject that you can't control, especially in street photography. So it's like, you can't control anything but what is in and isn't in your frame, and then when you take the photo, everything else is quite literally out of your control. And that's the surreal part, that it's like you are this small thing with no power that's somehow given all the power in that moment. That's what I think I love.
No, that's really interesting, man. I think that brings up another thing that Soundtalk talks about. And it's funny because, like, word for word, she mentions the click of the shutter. Like, word for word, the moment of change is, right? So, and she also talks about how a photographer's responsibility is to bestow importance, because like you said, whatever you don't put in the frame and whatever you don't put in the frame, whatever you do put in the frame, your choice, especially when you publish it, for us is to consume, right? We are consuming what you chose was valuable for us to consume. Like, you know what
important enough for me to make a photograph of.
Exactly. And then I think the other thing, and you're not mentioning it, I don't know if you feel like this, but Soundtalk does. Soundtalk says that photography is naturally predatory.
100%.
You know, and even just the descriptions you just gave, where it's like, just think about the idea of capturing, right? When you're hunting something, you inevitably capture it, right? And it's like if you're hunting with a gun, you gotta click too.
Yeah.
You know what I'm
Yeah,
saying?
yeah.
And it's the whole idea of focus.
And it's the whole idea of searching as well. It's like again, like hunting, really that's what you're doing. And again, I go back to street photography because in my opinion, I think street photography is the honestly the best form of photography that any photographer can practice. Even if you're not like, even if you don't have interest in terms of what the visual aspect can produce, even if you don't care about the photographs and the expectation that comes with street photography, or just the subject matter, which is street photography, I think everyone should practice street photography because it is the best form of photography in terms of, again, just not only like the literal and the conceptual, but then also, oh my God, I love getting into this conversation because
crazy.
Yeah, street photography is the best form of photography that you can practice because again, it forces you to pay attention. First of all, forces you to pay attention and be completely aware of your surroundings. It forces you to be completely in control because you have no control.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like over anything. It
forces you to be in complete control because you don't have control of anything.
Yeah.
Well, what is that? How is that control different? Because I understand you can't control your external environment. So what kind of control are you talking about?
Controlling kind of what you just said, choosing what's important.
Okay.
Choosing what's important to capture, choosing what's important to have in your frame, choosing what's not important enough to have in your frame, or in some cases, choosing something that's important enough to not include. Because again, sometimes that's what makes a photograph. Sometimes that's what makes the moment.
Is that it isn't true?
Is that it isn't all there, or that it isn't all given to you, and then the viewer has to either finish, finish or assume or wonder what is happening because of the information that's not given to you.
Of course.
Because you're only given so much.
I want to stay on the predatory thing for a little bit because that was such a new concept to me. I never saw photography in that way, and it really trips me up because once I start seeing it that way, the consumerism behind photography feels suddenly a little different. Right? The same way that a person may be hunting a photo, or the same way someone might hunt a deer and then chop it up, edit it, whatever the hell you might call it, and then package it, and then whether it's getting published to Instagram or if it's getting sent out to the grocery store, somebody's gonna eat it.
Where do I start? Because I want to go back to the hunting aspect of photography and how photography really from the beginning has always been an exploitative medium, because it's kind of the same thing. Like very exploitative. Even the language behind photography. You take a photograph.
You don't give a photograph.
You don't give a photograph. Like you take a photograph. It's like you're taking something that doesn't belong to you. Like photography is also in a way, going back to what we were talking about even in the beginning, where a photograph of you is a reflection of you, but it's not you. And in essence, it's you, but it's not you. And going back to now tying that to like exploitation is like, I'm choosing to take something that doesn't belong to me, and in a way it belongs to you because this is a reflection of you, and I'm taking it without your consent. Even if you have consent to take the photograph, like now there's something that physically exists that is a part of you that I own as a photographer. I mean, so it's like, and that's a whole other conversation, which is the power dynamic of ownership in photography. That's
does the photographer own the photo, or does the person who's the photo own the photo? I imagine if someone hires you to do portraits, okay, cool, it's theirs. But if it's street photography, suddenly ownership might be more up for grabs.
Exactly. And not only power dynamic between ownership of the photograph, but also just power dynamic of interpretation and I guess, what am I trying to say? Not only interpretation, but how I choose to portray you. And the power in that too. Because again, it's like, who has the power to portray whom in which way? Because if I am portraying you, let's say if I'm photographing you, the photographer has the power to photograph you the way I see you, or I can photograph photograph you the way that you see you, and then I can also photograph you the way that you actually are. Because those are two different things. Those are three different things. How I see you, how you see yourself, and who you really are really three different things.
How do you? I feel like I understand how you see someone and how
Yeah.
someone sees themselves. How do you determine who the person really is in this context?
I think every photographer, every artist has a different answer. 'Cause I think there are photographers who solely photograph people the way that they see the world. And then there are other photographers who solely photograph the world and people the way that they believe the individual wants to be seen.
Yeah, yeah.
And now that's a whole different thing too, because then it's like now you're also assuming the same way a photograph only tells you so much. One interaction with someone only tells you so much. One glance of someone only tells you so much. You can't know a whole person just off of a glance, especially in street photography when you're not even having a conversation. It's just so again, it's all these little nuances that really shape the photograph. But I definitely got a little off track because your question was again the visual.
Yeah. How did the visual media and the social media combine, and what is the product?
I think for one, it created much more of a hunger for that medium. I don't think photography has always been seen as this not only new medium, but a lot of people actually don't even consider art or at least a fine art.
Yeah.
Get me? So I think one, it created a hunger for just visual stimulation for sure.
Yeah.
One, that's number one. Two, because photography is exploitative and there's a hunting like primal urge to it, a lot of people don't know how to exercise that or even do it themselves. So I think a lot of people live vicariously through others because of photographs.
Yeah.
I think there's so many people that I know personally that have asked me, for example, or have told me, "Wow, I love your street photography or blah blah," or just in general, right? Like I love street photography because I love seeing that kind of work, but I can never do it myself because I don't have the courage, or I mean, sometimes it's not even courage. More like I don't have the respect or the lack of respect to get in people's faces and photograph and get that exploitative image that is so powerful, but in a way, it's like in order for this photograph to exist, the photographer had to really like step into somebody's boundaries and personal space to create that photograph. And I think people love those images, but don't have what it takes to create those images. Okay. And I think this visual medium and social media as well, like created more of that hunger, created more of like the understanding of what makes these photographs so captivating and so this and so that, but they don't understand, especially, and I keep going back to street photography because street photography is a perfect example of photography being exploitative and a hunting ground, really. Street photography right now on social media is so popular because of that, because there are people who are doing these things that not everyone has the capabilities of doing, or even just like the comfortableness of doing that, of getting in people's faces, because that's what it is. Like street photography is especially like you're exploiting someone's personal space, you're exploiting someone's privacy, and there's a section on that actually I would love to even like tie into this, like the private life becoming the public life, and that's the whole section in here that I love that he talks about. But I think it created that hunger. I think it created more of that understanding, and if anything, more of that condoning of that behavior. Because sometimes it's not, most of the time it's not okay.
No, I mean, you think about the audacity of some TikTokers.
Yeah.
Like recording themselves in public places when people are like going about their regular business.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's invasive.
It's
invasive.
Annoying. It's very invasive.
Yeah.
And I can think of a couple of photographers who like their whole approach to street photography is exactly that, being invasive. Because that's how you not only get uncommon reactions, that's how you get vulnerable moments, that's how you get just genuine, raw, human reactions to someone invading a personal space. And that only happens, especially in this day and age, with a camera. Because it's like, if you look at street photography from like the 60s, 70s, and even 80s, people weren't as angry or annoyed, or I don't want to say they were more welcoming, but a camera wasn't as invasive as it is now because everyone has a camera.
Yeah, yeah.
And not only everyone has a camera, but now everyone knows that media is going to be consumed by other people. Back then,
There wasn't as much a demand for
there
it.
wasn't a demand for it. And also back then, not everyone was gonna have their work in a gallery. Not everyone was gonna have their work in a newspaper. Most photographers back then was just people who just love photography as an act, and then maybe spend some time in a dark room and would print them out, and they weren't going to be seen or consumed by the general masses. Versus now, the assumption is this photograph that was just taken of me by a stranger will only not be seen by this stranger, but most
Millions
likely
of other
by
strangers.
other strangers that are
Yeah.
going to be on social media. So I think now people immediately become defensive
Yeah.
with the camera versus if you look at photography from the 60s, 70s, and 80s, there wasn't that wall up.
Mm-hmm.
Not as much, at least. There wasn't that wall. There wasn't that defense. There wasn't that feeling of complete invasiveness
Mm-hmm.
because people were kind of okay with it because it was fine. Versus now, I think not only are we more defensive because we know where the image in the media is going to be placed and consumed, social media is going to for everyone to see. But also now we're so much more aware of ourselves and making sure that we show the best version of ourselves. You know what I mean? Because of social media.
Yeah, yeah.
I think that's also why people feel like they're being invaded because if I can pose for this photograph and I'm ready for it, now I have some kind of control over who I'm choosing to portray myself as to you.
Yeah, yeah.
Versus if I'm not ready for this photograph and you're taking it without my consent, without my preparation, that's not the version of me that I want you to show the world. So I'd even think it's a conversation of you being invasive and taking my photograph without me asking. No, I think it's more you taking my photograph of a version that I don't want you to show the world.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's the whole thing where a lot of people on social media are going to show you the happy times, not the sad times.
Exactly.
I'm even thinking about big media. LeBron James gets accused of this all the time, but it's like he's always trying to push a certain narrative about himself and the league or whatever the hell it is, right?
Yeah.
Because he wants to be perceived in a certain way. I think something you said that really struck me was the dichotomy between the private and the public life.
Yeah.
Where as a human being, you have to deal with that dichotomy because we have an internal private world. I can't read your brain. Therefore, your thoughts are not public to me unless you speak them, right? But at the same time, as social creatures, by default, we have to engage with one another in order to survive. So by default, we have that public life.
Yeah.
It seems to be what I internalized and then thought from what you were saying is that the camera in combo with social media, it expanded the realm of our public lives.
Yeah.
Because before social media, your public life consisted of your community.
Yeah.
It might be just your family, it might be your coworkers, it might be your schoolmates.
Yeah.
But now
And it consisted of like your quite literally like just your physical interactions with people.
Exactly. But now the social boundaries have been pushed wide open. And a motherfucker in China can see a picture of me. I'm thinking, this is actually pretty funny. One of my favorite YouTubers, occasionally they do these ads for these companies. And one of the ads includes my man sitting on the toilet. Okay? Because he's like, I need to surf the web, Shark VPN, even when I'm taking a shit.
Yeah.
But then it's like, bro, you got people in China looking at you pretending to take a dump.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And you live in Canada. Like, that there's a lot of people in the damn world. You know what I mean? And the world's a big place.
Yeah.
So that just blew my mind there for a second.
Yeah, no, and I agree again. It expanded what public means.
It expanded what public means.
Like very much so. It also expanded like what is traditionally public and private now, and also expanded like what is okay to even show publicly. And real quick, I really just want to read that because it's exactly what we're talking about right now. But it's like he talks about exactly that, like the public versus the privacy, but then also experiencing each photograph or even medium, in this conversation, each TikTok, each reel, whatever you post on social media, you consume it as private because you're the only one looking at it.
It's just you and the
It's
screen.
just you and the screen and you and the media itself. But it's just, let's say,
Yeah.
a photograph in this case, right? Like, it's private because it's just between me and this photograph on my phone that you posted. So technically, it's me, the photograph, or in this case, the phone screen, and then the artist who published it.
Yeah, yeah.
It's only two people. But the thing is, there's a million people looking at it.
Exactly.
So it's like, it's a million cases of privacy, which now makes it public.
Exactly. Oh my goodness.
You know what I mean?
It's a million cases of privacy that make it public.
Because there's multiple people consuming the same thing that you chose to put out.
Yeah, yeah.
And I think that's also why some people get so embarrassed when they get caught recording themselves.
yeah.
But yet you're gonna post that same video on TikTok for the
yeah.
world to see.
And it's because we haven't edited it yet.
And
It's because you haven't edited
you know what
it
I mean?
yet. Yeah.
And again, the same passage. Like, each photograph is read as the private appearance of its referent. The age of photography corresponds precisely to the explosion of the private into the public,
Wow.
or rather into the creation of new social value, which is the publicity of the private.
Yeah. The publicity of the private.
The private is consumed as such.
Oh
publicly.
my gosh. That makes me think of? That makes me think of vlogs, right?
Yeah.
Because can you read that the last sentence one more time?
The age of photography corresponds precisely to the explosion of the private into the public, or rather into the creation of a new social value, which is the publicly of the private. The private is consumed as such publicly.
So I think the thing I'm harping on is the creation of new social values, and
Yeah.
this goes on to the living vicariously too, where your life is a form of social currency. If you live a lavish enough life,
I love that idea. Yeah.
And you know what? Not even social currency, monetary, money, straight up.
Now it's monetary value. for
People
sure.
can make a lot of money just posting their daily routines.
Yep.
You know what I'm saying? Themselves at the gym, whatever the hell it is, right? And so, yeah, that just blows my mind. And it's crazy to think, because this is something I was feeling, especially with Sontag, is like, man, she's gonna hate social media. Like, if this is how you feel about photography in the 70s and 80s, 20, 30, 40 years after you write this book, you're gonna be severely disappointed. Because even in the book, in the 80s or whatever, she's talking about, we live in a world of images, right? And I'm thinking in the 80s, a lot of what she's addressing, and this is not what I remember from the book, but it's the advertisements and the consumerism.
Yeah.
A lot of what you get from the cinema. I imagine you walking down New York in the 80s and they got that Jumbotron screen, probably. I don't know if that was around in the 80s.
Yeah.
But it's Coca-Cola ad scrolling by. You
But
know?
also keep in mind, like mid to late 70s into really 70s, but definitely for sure into the 80s. Like, you have a lot of like pop culture is
thriving.
Is thriving again. Like, even like, I know Andy Warhol wasn't around for much long after that, but it's just like Andy Warhol's work is someone that I think of a lot in that case, where it's like, now we're seeing this boom, and just like, dude, everyone wants to see celebrity lives. Everyone wants to see advertising. Like, advertising is a huge thing. I don't know if you know, obviously you've seen like his work with like the Campbell chicken noodle soup ads, and his conversation through photography and pop art of like consumerism. And it's just like people buying things, and like this is, I feel like the 70s and 80s is really like the birth of just like visual capitalism and visual consumerism, and like it's like buy this, buy that, and using photography to really just like spearhead that whole movement.
We really have that tendency, because I'm thinking about the phrase like window shopping. Like, we do a lot of buying with our eyes, and that sounds redundant, because like you have to see the thing before you purchase it generally, right? And whether that seeing includes your eyes, or like just touching it, or like learning about it, like we just have we're highly visual creatures, and we have that highly visual tendency. And the photography and social media they've really captured that one part of our psychology. You know what I'm saying? And have essentially manipulated it. You know, yeah. I had another point there, but I forget it now.
No, you good.
I guess steering away now from the consumerism a little bit, and we can get back there through this topic. one thing Sontag says that I thought was hilarious and very informative. So she quotes this study done in Paris where they measure how many households in Paris, or maybe it was across France, have cameras, right? And they noticed that houses that had children were twice as likely to have a camera as houses without children. And she explains because it's almost negligible to not photograph your children. How do you feel about that? Is it negligible to not photograph your kids? You know what I mean?
I like that, and I like that a lot, and I understand. I don't necessarily. I feel like negligible is a strong word.
Okay.
But at the same time, it's like we have this beautiful thing now that is photography. And I think it just comes down to not only responsibility as a parent, but it's also like awareness of what photography is. And obviously, as you know, children and kids, you don't understand what exactly is happening here. It's not just taking photos and this and that. It's like, no, you are quite literally, you now have, going back to the beginning of our conversation, you now have this, because of photography, especially in the 80s where it was filmed, because digital is a whole different conversation. You know? Okay, but I now have this physical, tangible reflection of this person on this day at this time doing this thing. Extremely specific. You know what I mean? And I think the idea of being negligible is I kind of agree the more I think about
It's
it.
hard to disagree. So I guess this is my question. Why is it negligible? I mean, my initial thought is like...
Because the children can't do it for themselves.
Yeah.
Not only can they not do it for themselves, but they don't see the value in doing it for themselves at that age.
That's true.
I think you as your parent, in a way, it is your responsibility to do it for them. Like you kind of have to do it for them. You know what I mean? It's just like, I wish I had more photographs of myself when I was younger. And that's a whole different thing because, you know, now it's a case of, especially I'm sure in the 70s and 80s, like photographs and photography wasn't as accessible as it is now. Everyone has a phone.
Yeah.
Every phone has a camera. You know, and again, it's not about accessibility thing, but it's, okay, sure, accessibility. But really, at that point, especially, like, everyone had the ability to do so. And I think it's important to do so, even if you don't see the value in it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I think I'm getting a little lost, like, myself now, too, because I'm like...
I got you. I'll pick up a little bit right here, because I think I got some, you know... I think the reason why it's negligible to not take photos of your children is because when you photograph, you document history. You know what I'm saying? And then I guess to ask why it's negligible to not take photographs of your children is the same as why it's negligible not to document like our global history. We need to know where we came from. You know what I mean? We need to preserve those personal and emotional moments in our lives. I look back on I'm the same as you. I used to hate taking photos as a kid, like being in photos. Because I just hated having my fucking picture taken, okay? But then the moment it really hit me where it's like, man, I shouldn't have been such an asshole, is when my cousin died. Because when I was going through all the photos, I realized, one, I don't have a lot of photos in the family book at all because I hated taking photos. And two, I never got a photo with this dude. You know what I'm saying? So now all I have are pictures of him, but not pictures with him.
Yeah.
And that hurts me.
Yeah.
Because especially now that I'm older, you're a kid, you don't think about the fact you're gonna die one day. But now I'm older, I'm fully aware, I'm like, yo, any moment I could kick the bucket. Cross the street at the wrong time. You know what I'm saying? Bad luck. Cross the street at the right time and somebody's driving crazy.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And
so you're aware of your own mortality.
Exactly, yeah. And I guess
yeah,
it's, I think even like from my own personal experience, looking at photos of myself, it's a real experience first, but also makes me fully aware of how far I've come. Like, you know what I mean? I used to be a baby like this big, 10 pounds.
So now you have a referent again. Like you have something
Yeah,
to like go back to.
exactly. And so I think the part where now taking photos of your kids can be very negligible because we live in the social media era. Some people, their whole social media is their kids, right? And you have to ask yourself, you know, taking a private photo and then putting it in the scrapbook, okay, cool, that's for the family. But right, once you put your children in the public eye, now there's so many other layers to that. You have people suing their parents for posting photos of them that they didn't give their consent for, right? You got creeps and predators out there probably following some random mom's Instagram page just because her kids are on it type shit. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, before social media, you had a photo of your child could not go public. You know what I mean? But now in social media, you have the control over your child's photo going public. And now, if you do so without awareness of the consequences, you're playing a danger.
You're negligible.
You're negligible.
For sure.
You know?
Like you are neglecting their safety. You are neglecting their privacy, you know what I mean? Yeah, it's just it's so much. But one last thing I want to say about like I struggle with that word. Sorry, it's my accent. Negligible. I think a big part of this conversation, but not only this conversation, but also photography as a whole, is our relationship to photography in regard to memory. And again, exactly how you just said, you know, you wish you had a photograph of not only your family member, but you with your family member.
Yeah.
You know, because you are not only old enough to understand the value in it, but correct me if I'm wrong, and you know, I don't want to dive deep into that conversation and the example that you gave up, but this happened not long enough for you to forget what this person looked like.
No. I'm talking about, it's hard for me to get the image of him in his deathbed out of my head. Like, you know what I'm saying?
Okay. So now imagine if this happened at an age where your memory will fail you.
Lord have mercy.
And that's where I'm trying to get at. So one, as a child, not only do you not know what a photograph is, so by extension, you don't understand its value. But then the third thing, which if anything to me is the most important, is that you're not going to remember. You're not going to remember any of this. So because I know as your parent that you're not going to remember any of this, I feel like it is a responsibility for me to give it to you. Now, if you don't want to do anything with it later, that's completely their choice. Now, when they're adults, when they understand, okay, for sure. But I think every parent should give their kids the opportunity to keep their memories.
Yeah.
Because that's exactly what it is. You're keeping their memories. They're not for you, because I'm an adult. I'm going to remember your birth. Yeah. You don't remember your birth.
You don't.
You know what I mean? And I think that's the thing. It's like, I think you're giving them the opportunity to keep their own memories. Yeah. I think that's why you're not, or you are being negligible if you don't, especially because of how easily accessible these things are.
Yeah.
Sure, in the 70s, I'll give, that's a different conversation in the 70s, because not everyone had the access to photography.
Exactly.
Or like, again, the funds, because even film back then wasn't that expensive. Okay, because in the 70s, at that point, everyone, for the most part, you can get a film camera. You know what I mean? 80s at least. So different conversation for when the book was created. But now contemporary times, there's no reason. I think there's no reason. I think there's really no reason for you to not do that, because unfortunately, the way our brains work, they're not fully cognitive and functional for the first couple years. I'm not going to keep those memories at all. So it's like, I would have liked to know what happened with this scar that I got when I was 2 years old.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know what I mean? It's like, and again, I think it all goes back to what you said about understanding yourself. You're letting your kids know where you came from and what happened. And not just literally in terms of, I'm from Bronx, New York. No, where you came from as a human being, your experience, what made you the way that you are.
Yeah.
And it all ties, every conversation we've had ties back to itself, because it's like, again, this photograph that exists is in essence a version of you. And this particular case in children is a version of you that you don't fully understand and you're not even self-aware of. So I think it's my job
Damn.
to be aware of your existence for you.
Damn. Nah, man, that's meta as shit.
But what do I know?
No, I think that was very well put, yo. How are you for time?
No, you good. I actually have OCD, so I'm like straightening it out with the line
Oh,
of the book.
okay.
You feel me? I'm like, it needs to be.
No, that's okay, bro.
Yeah.
So okay, cause I have like just to wrap up, I have two passages from Sontag that I want to read to you.
Please, and maybe that'll motivate me to finally pick it up.
Yeah.
I just like I know I'm going to just be obsessed with it,
It's
which
great.
is why I'm.
really
It's
good.
great. I know I'm gonna be obsessed with it, which is why I'm like waiting to just like I need to. I know for a fact I'm gonna pick it up in the summertime where I have like the sun is out, I can be outside more often, I can read it and actually like indulge. But right now I'm only reading things that I can kind of like read, put it back down.
Yeah, I got you.
Yeah.
And it's also a much easier read than Barthas. This, I believe, was translated from French.
French, yeah.
And
yeah.
therefore, it's kind of wonky sometimes.
Yeah.
This is straight written in English, so it's like, you know what I mean? It's perfect.
Yeah.
All right, so I'll read the
I want to mention too
ahead.
the not right away. I want to see what you bring up, but
Okay.
I want to mention at some point the I guess I quoted her directly.
The landscape joint?
Yeah, the landscape conversation.
Yeah. We got that.
Because I was talking about it with my professor, with my photography professor, and he just smiled and he's like, "Oh, so you're a fan of Susan Sontag's on photography?" And I'm like, "Actually, I haven't read it yet." And
Yeah.
he's like, "Oh wow!" And
You're
then,
having type shit. I got you.
Yeah. No, please go ahead.
I got you. This one's a short quote. The next one's a bit longer.
Okay.
All right. There's a metaphysical joke in here. Photographs and quotations seem, because they are taken to be pieces of reality, more authentic than extended literary narratives. The only prose that seems credible to more and more readers is not the fine writing of someone like Ajit, I don't know who that is, but the raw record, edited or unedited, talk into tape recorders, fragments or the integral text of subliterary documents, self-deprecating, sloppy, often paranoid first-person reportage. I kind of went off track. I started reading that. That was more than I expected to read.
Yeah.
But I guess the quote is, the thing I'm really interested in is that photographs and quotations feel more authentic than an extended literary narrative. Like, than any fiction book I have on the shelf right now, a photograph feels more authentic than any book ever written about anything. You know what I mean? What do you think about that?
I think, honestly, and I would love to read that chapter, and hopefully she goes more into it, but I feel like it's simply because there's a visual aspect. I think human beings, we love to connect with, we're social individuals, like we're social beings, and I think for some reason, and I actually have talked about this with my class, like with my students, for some reason, we just connect. For some reason, we connect with other human beings, even though we know nothing about them. I think just seeing a human being, a face on a photograph, we find a reason, we look for a reason to connect every single time. The same way, again, going back to the conversation of like, what's in the frame and what's not in the frame, we look for reasons to fill in those pieces. And I think it always feels more real because of the illusion that this is a real person, even though you're just looking at a two-dimensional thing. It's a piece of paper with tiny ink dots that's in unison, in collection, looks like a human face. But we connect to it for some reason because we're just emotional beings, one, but also two, like, I think it feels more genuine because it feels like we're looking at or talking to another person.
Yeah.
Versus letters and, again, type and text and whatever the case may be, there's something that disconnects you because there's no visual aspect of it. That's my guess.
So this is it's funny because she mentions that quotations, right? Like a quote from somebody is more authentic than a literary narrative, right? So I don't think it's just that it's the visual cue we get from the photograph, although I think that's a big component of it. The literary narrative, we know someone can lie. especially if it's extended. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
There could be multiple lies from the beginning to the end. It can be manipulated and warped. Compared to, and I think this is one of the things about quotations and photography, it's like you said, there's something more connecting about it because there's a little more of a personal element. If it's a picture of a person, you can relate to that person. If it's a picture of a place, you can very much quickly imagine yourself in that place.
Yeah. Or if you've been in that place, now you have, again, a connection to it.
Yeah. And I think what makes the quotation more authentic than a literary narrative, one, it's short, so it's easily consumable. That seems pretty obvious. But then it's also, I think, the fact that somebody said it.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? I can quote you. You know what I mean? I can't just come up with the quotation out of thin air. Like, I have to say something. I guess I can come up with the quotation out of thin air, but I have to speak it in order for the thing to be real. And it's so brief, and you know that it comes from a person, it just feels real. You know what I'm saying? And there's not much room to lie.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Yeah.
I agree. And I think it's true. I think even just seeing those quotation marks, like it has an effect on us. Now we'll look, as soon as you see that first quotation mark, I think from that point forward, now we approach the sentence completely different. It's like now it's like I'm reading, but now because I see these quotation marks from this point forward, now I'm connected to this person. Like now you try to match whatever the case may be, but I think you approach it differently when you see a quotation mark.
No, yeah. I think about the way the way a quote is gonna break up like a news article.
Yeah.
Like the news article starts, this week at Lawrence High, the Lancers won, 60-50. Here's a quote from the team captain. You know what I'm saying? All of a sudden, like, you're kind of just snatched out of reality because you have to hear someone's words, like what they said.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Something about an individual, like something about giving that person the freedom to say whatever they want to say instead of, again.
Oh.
You know what I mean? There's something there.
Yeah. Because even in that example, like there's the reporter who's reporting on the events of like the physical space.
Yeah.
Right? But then there is what another person is experiencing in that space. And that's where the quote comes in.
Yeah.
Like the reporter is supposed to be objective, but now we have this more personal almost take and experience provided by the quotation.
And I think that's what it is too, because I think we just subconsciously understand the reporter is doing nothing but a job.
Yeah, they're essentially the camera.
They're essentially the camera, but then it's like now we have a quotation, it's like, okay, now I'm hearing from someone who experienced this thing. For some reason, immediately, like I approached that sentence differently because you were there. This is about you.
Yeah.
This affected you, like directly. Yeah. And again, now it's like now I feel a connection to you because you were affected by this thing, whatever it is you're talking about. I don't know.
No, that's amazing. Yeah, man. I never thought about that. Because that's something I was struggling with. Like, how does a quotation, like, how does that do the same thing that a photograph does? But I feel like your explanation kind of shines some light there. Because I think that's a very good, and it's one of those moments, Sontag, I feel like she just touches that. She doesn't
dive into it.
You know what I'm saying? It's because, honestly, there's a lot. And, like, I would read this when you got time.
Yeah.
Type of thing.
No, that's why I'm waiting for the summer. There's
But
another one of her books that I want to read too, because this is a collection.
Yeah.
There's like Susan Sontag on photography. I think there's one on romance or relationships.
Yeah.
There's 4 or 5 of them. Low-key.
Before I read this one, I read On the Suffering of Others.
Oh, yeah.
And that one is just like one long essay. You know what I'm saying?
Okay.
Versus this is a collection of essays.
Okay.
You know what I mean? That's also why, like, there's not a lot of, like, synchronous. There's some synchronous between each chapter, but you could also read each chapter independently and still get a lot of info versus...
the common thread that ties all the essays together is the subject matter.
Yeah, photography. Haha, that's funny. But now I'm gonna read this one's on 119. This one's the long one. Photography is seen as an acute manifestation of the individualized I, the homeless, private, self-astray in an overwhelming world, mastering reality by a fast visual anthologizing of it. Right. So I think what she's saying is that the world is expansive, but it can become smaller and more personalized through photography. You know what I'm saying?
Because now you're viewing one individual's personal experience.
Yeah, yeah, and it anthologizes it because it's a collection. You know what I'm saying? It's a collection of one individual's experiences. Or photography is seen as a means of finding a place in the world, still experienced as overwhelming alien, by being able to relate to it with detachment, bypassing the interfering, insolent claims of the self. But between the defense of photography as a superior means of self-expression and the praise of photography as a superior way of putting the self at reality's service, there is not as much difference as might appear. Both presuppose that photography provides a unique system of disclosures, that it shows us reality as we had not seen it before.
Wow.
I'm trying to hear what you got to say about that quote right there. Feel free to read it if you want.
Even just like the second half, because
It's deep. It's deep.
yeah.
You know, I mean, my immediate thought is like on the disclosure. So one thing I think she talks about in this chapter is at one point we realized that like, yo, if we zoom in on shit, it looks really cool. You know what I mean? But it also, if we zoom out on shit, it also looks really cool.
Yeah.
But it's like, it doesn't matter what you're zooming in on. You just want to, if even it's the same thing you've always seen, you just want to see it in a different way, in a way you've never seen it before. You know.
I'm stuck on the I'm stuck on like the self-expression and self-reality aspect of it.
That's the part I'm also struggling with.
And not even that I'm struggling with it. It's more just like, okay, because really the whole thing is tying to like a place of self, right? Because it starts with saying photography is seen as an acute manifestation of the individualized.
Yeah.
The one, right? And then fast forward and also, anthologizing it. Okay. But then it also continues saying, or photography is seen as a means of finding a place in the world. Again, per individual. Because each individual is using photography as a means to find their own place in the world. So again, the individualized. Your individualized reality.
Whoa.
Wait, hold on. Hold on. Because then again, bypassing the interfering, insolent claims of the self, individualized, but between the defense of photography as a superior means of self-expression, one, or the praise of photography as a superior way of putting the self at reality's service.
Yeah.
Okay?
Okay. This is tough.
So 1 and 2, both presuppose that photography provides a unique system of disclosures, which is that it shows us reality as we had not seen it before.
Yeah.
And that is because each person's experience is individualized.
Whoa.
So I've never seen your reality before because it's not my reality.
Yeah.
And from my understanding, you know what I mean? Like that's what she's going for, from my understanding. But it's also like, it's a lot, but I 100% agree that photography gives you the ability to show me a way or a reality that I've never seen before because it's not my reality to experience. It is yours.
And I guess that's why, in a certain sense, photography is also
the superior form of self-expression. Because photography can be with the exclusion of Photoshop and AI and whatever, just photography at its core, like the bare bones version of photography with no editing and no manipulation. Photography is a reflection of what we see through our eyes.
Yes.
Right?
Going back, it's because what I view as important is different than what you view as important.
100%.
And therefore, as photographers, we're taking pictures of what we as individuals think is important.
Yeah.
So when I show you a picture of something I think is important, I'm showing you, like, I'm letting you see the world through my eyes.
Quite literally.
Shit.
Yeah. And I think also taking that a step further, like this one section is like, yes, our place in the world, and where is it?
Our place in the world versus the detachment.
Yeah, with
Oh, no.
detachment, bypassing the interference in the self between the defense of photography as a superior means of suppression and the praise of photography. Putting the self at reality service that there's not much difference as we might appear. Okay, I'm sorry. That it shows reality as we had not seen it before. Just there was something that I think that you said. I thought it was in here, but I guess you mentioned it. But it's so many thoughts I have to like tie in together.
Parse them.
Yeah, but ultimately it's showing you, in my case, if I'm the photographer, if I'm the artist, right, showing everyone my individualized reality, which is not only what I deem to be important and what's not important, but also just what I see through my eyes. I think it's even as simple as like, back in 2018, I went to China, right? Beautiful, beautiful experience. Like actually life changing. Like it was one of the most. It opened up the world for me for sure. But you mentioned something about your reality and how I use photography to show my reality and show my life. I'm starting to lose it because there's so much. I'm so sorry, but hold
It's
on.
okay. It's okay.
I wish I wrote down what you said. I thought it was in the passage, but it wasn't in the passage. It was something that you said.
Philosophizing.
Yeah, it was something that you said, but ultimately it's something along the lines of I'm using photography as a means to show my reality, and then people now view you and who you are differently because of what you choose to photograph and because of what my reality is through my photography. So tying that all together, my first big trip anywhere, my first big experience with photography especially, was me visiting China, right? And I think from that point forward, people's perception of me changed because my reality was so different than theirs, because I got to experience and photograph something like being in China or being in a new country.
Which is something many of us in our community won't get to experience.
Won't get to experience. And I think, again, it goes back. Oh, I closed it. You know where it's at?
I closed it. Yeah. It was 192.
Okay.
Crap.
No, you good.
It was 92. No, it was not.
It's all good. I
had
mean,
a two
yeah, I
on
mean,
it.
if you find it, definitely let me
Got
know.
it right here.
Oh,
It was
see?
109, 119. There was a 9.
There was a 9 in there. Then it shows us reality as we had not seen it before.
Yeah.
And again, I lost that thought. I lost the thing that you said, because it would have been absolutely perfect. And watch, we're gonna go back and rewatch this and we'll be like, see, that was the thing.
If y'all remember what I said, put it in the chat.
You know what I mean? But it's something along the lines of, again, like being able to express not only myself, but then also show my reality and my life, and using photography as a means to do so. But then now, in a way, photography being the thing that skews and changes how people see me because of photography.
Because you're known as the photographer.
Yeah, and also like what I choose to photograph is what my reality is.
Yeah.
Like what I choose to photograph and what I choose to show you through photography is my life. So if I choose to photograph things that you have never seen before, or XYZ, you know what I mean? Now it also changes my life completely and how you view me and what my life is. Again, I feel like I'm tiptoeing and dancing around the conversation that I'm trying to have, and I'm dancing around the thing that I'm trying to say, but it's like on the tip of my tongue and I can't get it. But
whenever it comes to you, just shoot me a text, right? We'll wrap up with this question, because this is the one part of that quote I guess I struggle with. And it's that photography is a tool for finding your place in the world. The reason why I struggle with that concept is because, one, photography is predatory. And in being predatory, she says this in the quote herself, it's detachable, right? So how does photography, a thing that allows you to detach from reality, both as a viewer and as the picture taker, right? How does that help you find your place in the world? Like I don't understand that thread. And I guess did photography help you find your place in the world? And how does that all tie in?
Yeah. I don't know. I think the detached part also gets me, but I think it also is kind of going back to the same conversation we were just having of that is that person's reality and it's not mine. So I think like by choosing to photograph whatever I choose to photograph and then choosing to then showcase and have it be consumed, my place in the world is what I'm showing you and it's my reality and my reality alone. Because now me as a consumer, I can live vicariously through you and your reality and because of what you chose to photograph. But that I think no matter what, we'll always sever that connection of like, this isn't my reality. Like this isn't my photograph. This isn't my visual. This is not mine. I'm living through you for a second. I get to share this moment with you because quite literally I'm looking through your eyes. But I think the detachment is the fact that I know, and every consumer knows, that this photograph does not belong to you, nor did you create it. Nor was this visual, nor was this photograph created by me. So like, I get to peek through your window,
Yeah.
but what's outside of that window isn't mine, nor do I have access to it.
Yeah.
And I think that's the detachment, the fact that I'm looking through a window. So by finding like, I think that's how you find your place in the world. That's how it helps you find a place in the world because this experience, this photograph was made by me and only me because I was at this place at this time and I photographed this thing and I chose to do that. Like this is me.
Because it essentially engages your autonomy, not as
Yes.
a artist, but as a human being.
100%.
It goes back to that control thing where, damn, yeah. Suddenly, like,
I think it solidifies your existence because you made that photograph exist.
holy
Does that
shit.
make sense?
That does make sense.
And I think me as a consumer, me as a viewer, the detachment is knowing that I did not experience this thing that you're choosing to show me.
Yeah.
Even though I get to peek through it because you get me? Like, again, a photograph is a window. I know you've heard that saying before.
No,
like,
yeah.
every photograph is a window. I'm living vicariously through you because you created that, and that is quite literally what you saw with your eyes. But I think the detachment is not on the photography's or the photographer's side. I think the detachment is
on the consumer side.
on the viewer's side.
Damn.
And I think by forcing me to acknowledge as a viewer that this reality isn't mine, the viewers, this reality is a photographer's, I'm just letting you peek into it. That is making the photographer even more and more solidified in their own reality.
Absolutely.
That's your place in the world, showing me what you saw.
If there's a photo, someone had to take that photo.
Yeah.
And in order for someone to take that photo, someone had to exist.
Yeah.
And
that is your place in the world.
Yeah. It essentially it affirms the existence.
Yeah.
Not of the thing, but of the person who captured the thing.
Yeah.
That's gnarly.
I think that's my version of at least of like the detachment. I don't think the detachment is alluding to the photographer. I think it's alluding to the viewer, which then further solidifies the photographer's existence and place in the world. Because you had to make that photo. And you know what I mean? I wasn't there. And I think a photograph in itself implies both.
It's kind of like finding fossils. Like we know the Neanderthals existed because we have their bones.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you know what I'm saying? There's something of them left behind.
Yeah.
Otherwise, we would not know they existed.
Yeah.
That's gonna leave me thinking for a while, yo. You know what I mean? Okay. I guess do you feel like that applies to you?
Yeah, 100%. Especially again, even being from just like such a small city, small town like Lawrence, I think a lot of the photographs and therefore experiences that I've been lucky enough and blessed enough to experience further solidifies like my place in the world because my experiences are mine.
Yeah.
And I can show you my experiences through photography and what I've lived. You know what I mean?
I
And
know what you
again,
mean.
like I'm letting you peek through my window, but the things outside of that window are mine.
Yeah.
And that's my place. Like my place in the world is everything outside of this window,
Yeah,
so to
yeah,
speak.
yeah.
And you know what I mean?
I know exactly what you mean.
Yeah,
It's trippy shit.
I'm
brother-
looking forward to reading this.
You should. It's really good. It's really good.
Yeah.
I want to be a photographer now. So that's what this conversation just did to me.
You should. It's a beautiful experience. And again, I think we talked about this a little bit on one of the first podcasts that we did together, but I originally started doing photography simply because I knew it would outlive me, you know? And when I first started, when I was 17, 18 years old, for some reason, I had this undeniable, unfathomable amount of fear of death.
Yeah.
For
we
some
did talk
reason.
about that.
Yeah, and I think it really helped me accept that
Yeah.
because I knew that photography was going to outlive me. My photography, therefore my experience, was going to outlive me. And photography then, again, solidified my existence. It proved I existed. Yeah, I think it's great. I think photography is a beautiful, beautiful thing that everyone should practice to some extent. You know,
We all got phones, so
we all got phones,
you're
but I
probably
will
watching
say,
or listening to this on your phone right now.
I will say, the phone is an easier, accessible thing, but it is not the full experience.
No. I saw somebody do a side-by-side comparison. Like they took a picture of an owl in a tree with their phone, and they
Yeah.
took it with the camera.
Oh no, honestly, I'm not even talking about like
The quality?
quality, because I'm sure.
You're talking about the experience.
Oh, I'm talking about the experience.
Okay.
100%. The experience is not anywhere near the same at all. I think you need a more, traditional camera, you know, but I think you need an actual tool that is made and its sole purpose is photography
Yeah.
versus this amazing,
Contraption.
I want to say like multi,
It's a Swiss Army knife.
yeah,
You know what I mean? You can take pictures, make phone calls, send text messages,
This
put
is a
out
really
racist
good
tweets.
racist tweets. This is a good multidisciplinary tool. You know,
Discipline and phones, I've never heard those two together.
no, I mean, hopefully one day. You know,